At Rubber Band, we empower each other through positivity, kindness, and practical advice. Join a community of thousands of peers who understand the unique challenges you face. Rubber Band. Company agnostic, low ego, high empathy, always supportive.
Are you tired of spending endless hours on traditional hiring methods? Fairgo.ai is here to revolutionize the way you conduct interviews. Our platform allows for real-time AI interviewing, giving you the flexibility to connect with candidates anytime, anywhere. By automating the matching process, we eliminate the need for manual input, saving you time and effort. And the best part? We're committed to promoting a fair and unbiased interview process by removing identifying information. Embrace the future of hiring with Fairgo.ai today so you never miss another great candidate.
Welcome, viewers, and welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Rubber Band Vodcast and Podcast. The industry is still abuzz. We're all talking about generative AI. Some of us are embracing it to a degree. Others are still terrified. So today's episode, I'm really fortunate to be joined by Julian Bright. And Julian is from Fairgo.ai. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Julian Bright, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Eden.
Oh, thank you. This is an exciting conversation. As I mentioned in that little intro, this is what we're talking about. This is what we've been talking about for the last 12 months and beyond. So I'm really keen to hear, and I'm sure our audience are really keen to hear, to see, to learn what's going on here with Fairgo.ai. I've seen a sneak peek. We are going to play a demo for the audience as well, but I think the best place to start, Julian, let's get to know you a little bit. For anyone out there that hasn't met Julian, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience?
Sure, yeah, happy to do that. So I'm a technologist. I've been in technology for over 20 years. I've been in Melbourne as well for about 15 of those years. When I moved actually to Melbourne, I started at Seek. So Seek was going through a big technology transformation back in 2011, and I moved down from Sydney. Escaped the nice weather and the beaches, and landed in Melbourne. And actually, I'm loving it. I've been having a great time down here. But when I joined Seek, it was pretty early days of their growth phase. We brought on hundreds of folks into the organization, and I was involved in helping that transition. But what I also did is I moved pretty quickly into a new data science team that was spun up. So I did Seek for 6 years, and most of that time was data and analytics products. And so one of the first things we did was build search and recommendation tools. And so folks might have signed up for the job mail and sort of start to see those personalization aspects. So that was something I was involved with, as well as a number of initiatives. So I got really excited about the potential of AI and machine learning, and continue that throughout my career. So after leaving Seek, I ended up joining Amazon.
Oh, wow.
So I was, solution architect at Amazon, still based out of Melbourne, but obviously in a much bigger organization and much larger sort of potential and scope. And I continued focusing on AI and machine learning throughout that time, but I also did a lot of hiring. So, at my time at Seek, I learned about the marketplace, about the dynamics between hirers, talent, employers, some of the challenges of matching candidates to hirers. And then at Amazon, I learned a lot about their hiring process. And, I think one thing that's really interesting about Amazon is a huge company, but, it still operates in a quite lean way. So they have, what they like to call two pizza teams, which is essentially, enough people to, consume two pizzas are sort of autonomous to a certain extent. And so all those people work collectively together. And so hiring is actually a really important part of the culture.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that Amazon's managed to do quite early in their sort of establishment was define these leadership principles. And so, they use these leadership principles to help with all aspects of running the company, but in particularly in hiring. And so, as a hiring manager, what you would often do is anchor some questions and the way you run interview processes around these leadership principles. And if you get through the initial screening interview, you typically have what they call a loop, and a loop is essentially 4 different interviews happening in sort of different aspects of those leadership principles and testing. For example, deep dive would be something that a technology person would test, or innovate and simplify might be another one, or learning, be curious, various interesting sort of aspects of that. And what they're looking for is insights into the way you think about building software and sort of working with teams and that sort of stuff. So really interesting process, and actually quite effective, and kept the bar high. And there was some other things they did which were really quite clever, which was have a bar raiser individual as part of that hiring process. And essentially the bar raiser sits in there, and they're outside of the organization, and they sort of help level check the hire, but also they're sort of someone who can either manage the process or potentially sanity check that the hiring manager is making the right decisions for the organization, and not just sort of looking to get someone a bum on a seat, so to speak. So that was really interesting. And after leaving Amazon after 4 years, I joined a small startup, actually. So I was based still in Melbourne, but I was an engineering manager working remotely for a US-based startup called Breadybase. And when we started this company, I was a founding engineer, so I was quite early on. Went over to the Valley, met the team, and did that every sort of 6 months. But interesting thing was, I joined that company to help organizations sort of adopt machine learning, because it was still pretty hard at that point. There wasn't any ChatGPT, there wasn't any generative AI, and what happened partway through that those few years I was at Breadybase is we had this new wave of technology, right? So we had generative AI sort of start to come into the mainstream. And so what we did is we made it possible for companies to basically adopt an open source version of a ChatGPT and deploy that and sort of run that at scale. And so I was building basically the infrastructure from the ground up to support that. So I learned a lot about generative AI and some of the challenges of getting it to work at scale, but also basically some of the power and potential of it. And so that got me really excited about the opportunities and really the game-changing capability of this technology. So Breadybase was what they call an infrastructure AI company. So essentially working, on the sort of lower level of the stack. We provided a service that people could use to connect and sort of do ChatGPT type inference. And this was really interesting, but I was also curious as to what it could do as a vertical AI. And so when we talk about vertical AI, we're talking about sort of moving up the stack, if you like. So building applications on top of this infrastructure. And so, thinking back to my time at Amazon and Seek, I really saw an opportunity for building a HR vertical AI, specifically around talent acquisition. And so that's kind of where Fairgo.ai was born. I was like, what is one of the really biggest pain points for talent acquisition teams? And interestingly, partly because of the introduction of generative AI, candidates were getting very clever about using it to help their employment chances, right? So they were using it to customize their resumes. They were using it to apply at scale. And so what was happening is that hirers were seeing a 3x increase in volume of applications, partly due to this sort of technology capability. And so they were really struggling to differentiate between candidates, to deal with this hundreds or even thousands of applications that were coming in. And so then the idea came to me, well, look, why don't I build a human-like screening capability and have a live video interview that is run by an AI that is actually able to really help the hiring manager in that. And so that's what I set out to build with Fairgo.ai.
So when you're saying to conduct those interviews, so we've had platforms in place that are video interviews, right? And they, you could do your introduction and you could record that, and you could, I suppose, deploy that en masse. A lot of organizations have been doing that for a number of years when it comes to graduate hiring or volume hiring for contact centers. What's the difference between video and what you're developing in terms of AI interviewing?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I like to call my solution a live video interview, but
Right.
effectively you can think of it as a two-way interview as well. So most of these traditional one-way video interviewing platforms that you talk about, they either present a question either in the form of a video or often just as a sort of text question on the screen,
Hmm.
and a candidate will get an opportunity to answer that. So they'll be given some think time. They might get it to retry a couple of times, but ultimately it's a one shot recording, right? And so that recording is ultimately provided back to the hirer, and they will make an assessment on whether that was a good answer. Now, that's fine, but how many times are you going to answer it first right time? So probably
Totally.
not.
Of
So you're
course. Yeah,
probably
yeah.
going to have
You got
a
three
few goes
attempts,
at it,
right?
and then
Yeah.
after your third attempt, well, you're out of luck. That's the last
Yeah.
go. So I try to take some of the pressure off the candidate and basically treat it like a human conversation, right? So they don't have to answer everything at once. They can you know talk about their experience, and then I help them tease out the answer. And the way I do that is using behavioral style interviews. So similar to what humans would do. It's like, hey, tell me about the situation. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, what impact did that have? Just that sort of conversation. And the AI is actually really good at doing that because it understands language very well. And not only that, it's an expert in many fields, right? So if you're talking about something very technical, it actually knows what you're talking about. And this is a
Mm.
big difference between a lot of screening interviews that are just high level, right? So they're typically used to check some basic facts, availability and things like that. Whereas what's really useful is when you can get a lot more data at scale, and so that's the power of this live video interview.
And I can see the power in it. I suppose, when I did the intro earlier, where some are embracing, some are a little bit scared. How do we ensure through the solution of having AI conducting interviews that we don't lose the human connection? Does it feel human for the candidate? Do they feel like they're talking to a real person?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's a lot of fear of this actually. So, employers are worried about brand reputation. They're thinking that candidates won't enjoy the experience. And the interesting thing is, any interview process is actually better than no interview process. And so, a one-way video interview is better than sending off a resume because at the end of the day, the candidate gets to show or demonstrate something. Now, a
Mm,
two-way interview is actually even better, I would argue, because the candidate feels like they're heard. The AI said, "Oh, I heard this, but tell me about this." Right? So they're like, "Oh, cool." So yeah, it feels like it understands me, and that's actually borne out by the feedback that I've got from candidates. So I actually dog fooded this, as we say in the business, which
yep.
which is essentially using it to look for a candidate for myself. I've got an interview next week in real life with one of these candidates. Basically, what happened is I interviewed a number of people through my tool. And they gave me the feedback that it was a fun, really engaging experience. And so, I think it's a little bit surprising initially because candidates don't really know what to expect. But
Mm,
within literally 30 seconds, right, when the AI says, "Hey, I heard this. Can you tell me about this?" It's like, I get it now, right? It's listening to me. It's in real time. It's a conversation, and I don't have to feel so much pressure about getting it right. So that's
mm.
the vibe. And I think
Right.
until people really see it, it's hard to imagine what it's like.
Well, that could be a good segue. I mean, we've got a demo. So
Yep.
why don't we bring that up for our viewers and our audience? Let's see this in real life and get an
Mhm.
understanding of how this all works. And then Julian, you and I will come back and we'll debrief. I can't wait to show you. This is cool. This is really cool. Thanks,
Yeah,
Julian.
no worries. So let's sign in with Google. Create our new account. Now we're going to create a job. This will be a full stack engineer for Gen AI. And okay, so now this is creating our job. Let's move our timer up a bit. So what we'll see in a couple of minutes is the summary created from the job ad. Here we go. Dynamic startup, revolutionizing hiring, experience in Python, Golang AI technologies. There's some attributes, some traits, different levels of personality. Describe a cross-functional project as a question. System optimization, REST APIs, example, integrating payments and billing. And we've got the option to add a candidate here. So we'll do this. Julian Wright, and we'll go Julian Bill Club, Fairgo.ai. So once that's added, what we'll notice is, let's put this up here, we'll be able to upload a resume. I'll grab my resume, click upload, and then the resume will be evaluated using large language model. So you can see here we've got 20 years experience, data services, software, some high-level attributes of my experience, and then the resume itself will be evaluated. So we have some high-level stats here, source match, and then overall yes, 20 years experience, and we look at some skills. So it hasn't actually identified some of those skills in my resume. The document is also available to see there. Okay, so now we'll go back to the opportunity and we'll create an interview record. So this interview, we can launch that interview. And so here we can turn on or off the camera, or let's see, we can turn that on or off. We can choose something like this, and the language, as well as the interview to start. Okay, so we're at 31:34, and we'll kick this off. Let's go.
Thank you for taking the opportunity to interview with Fairgo today. In a few moments, you'll be asked to introduce yourself and then answer 4 questions relevant to the role, which should take about 15 to 20 minutes.
Image on the right is
I find it helps when candidates tell me a story in answering the questions.
How to approach the interview by
I'm looking for
having a
examples from your
conversation
work
with AI.
experience, including what the situation or challenge was that you faced, what was the role you played, and how the steps you took achieved the desired result or outcome. Don't feel you need to answer everything at once. This will be a conversation, so you can take your time. Best of luck.
Okay, so that's the intro video finished, and now we'll see the agent pop up and we'll ask us some questions.
Congratulations, you have completed the interview. Goodbye.
All right, so at 13:50, we have now completed the interview. And so the next steps in this will be the process of evaluation. So if we go back and have a look at the interview now, we'll notice that the particular transcript record is available here. So we can click through and see, we started this at 1:35. There's a series of questions here, a number of turns to get to the second question, question 2. And then if we keep going down here, we can see, question 2 was ultimately answered before we completed the interview. And then the actual video itself is also available, and you can see that's the video here visible.
Hello, Julian.
Okay, so now if we head back to the interview, what we'll be able to see is we've got a status of finished and we've got an evaluation. And so we've got a recommendation of yes to hire, saying the candidate demonstrated a strong experience, they showcased the ability to collaborate, their problem-solving skills, and with respect to things to not hire, there was some instances where they worked independently, so maybe not cross-functional, but in general you can see that every question, so this one took 3 turns to answer, 3 minutes, and there's some quotes as well from this. This question was answered, this question was answered, and then on the last question, it's, did not provide specific examples of cross-functional team or collaboration, and so was marked down a little bit on that one. But otherwise, pretty good. And also, if you look at the statistics, you'll see that there's a score here. There's also a personality compatibility, so that's based on these traits. And so, high openness, high consistency, extroversion, agreeables, and that's it. And so now, basically, within literally 30 minutes or not even, we have a fully completed interview, and that's a wrap.
And we are back. Welcome back, Julian. I'm mind blown. Look, I know, audience, there was a little bit of fast forwarding just to make it nice and succinct. So I'm going to talk you through some of the things that perhaps we did go through quite quickly in the demo. But Julian, I'm kind of thinking when watching that as a talent acquisition leader, leading a team of, I have 5 talent partners at the moment reporting into me. We're seeing this massive increase in volume when it comes to applications coming through. And we're not even big job boards. We don't advertise everywhere, right? Like, we're seeing all of this coming directly via our careers page. So I can imagine it's even more so for people that do use, the job boards out there more frequently. I just can see so much benefit to myself and my team, because in addition to that, talent acquisition teams are trying to become more talent management teams, but we're getting bogged down in this sheer volume of applications that are coming through, and we can get them rated through ATSs and things like that. That kind of technology is there, but this is next level. I mean, I look at Fairgo.ai and it's creating the questions, right? Like, how does it do that? Like, tell me about that. How is it actually taking that away from us? Because that is the mundane work we don't want to be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. No, look, that video I recorded one shot in real time, so you might see the timer there ticking over. But effectively, I onboarded myself onto the platform. I uploaded a job ad. So basically, the way it starts is you either provide a URL or job description. The AI, the generative AI, using a large language model, will read the description and it will come up with the questions based on the job description. So if you've got a job description that is hitting all the right points, you'll get some fantastic questions. If you don't, maybe time to revisit your job description and work on improving it. But seriously, like, that was actually a signal to me. It's like that maybe there's some improvement and opportunity here. So once the questions are generated, you can obviously customize them, but that they're used as that interview prompt, right? But when I say prompt, it's like that's the question that it starts with. Of course, tell me about a time when you had this experience. Could go anywhere. And the beauty is, of course, it anchors back to the question and the job ad, and so we get some really relevant data.
Absolutely. And then not only is it doing that for us, right? And a lot of people are using ChatGPT to format questions and things like that. That's already going on, those that are embracing it. But this is next level, right? This is basing it off our position descriptions, developing those questions, but then it's asking them, right? Like, so it's removing that phone screening element of our role as well, but providing a deeper experience for candidates.
Of course. And the beauty is, of course, it's asynchronous. It's whenever the candidate wants to do it, whatever time they want to do it. So you can have a job ad up today. People can interview with Fairgo.ai the same day or tomorrow. And, in a day or so, you could have 50, 100 candidates have gone through this process with really great data that you just don't get from the resume.
And it's then taking that data, it's probing while it's interviewing the candidate, it's gathering all of that relevant data. How do we then evaluate it? What comes back to us? How do we trust it? What does that all mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think one of the challenges of running a good hiring process is being consistent for a start. So I think having a structured interview process where you ask the same questions, you collect comparable data is really important. So the AI does that, of course, because it's always consistent. The transcript itself, however, will be different for everyone, right? Because people will give different examples. People will talk about different experience. Now, what my platform does is it looks at the transcript holistically, looks at the questions that were asked, and then it makes an assessment on how well the candidate answered the question. And so it uses that as a mechanism to provide an overall score and rating. Plus, it provides just a high-level recommendation, which is a sort of reason to hire or not to hire. And so that's a bit of an Amazon thing where we say, look, here's some really good strengths, and also here's some weaknesses, because it's important to sometimes call that out. But for the questions, it'll tell you why it thinks the question was answered well, and not only that, it'll actually tell you why, with some relevant citation to the transcript. So you can actually click into that and sort of see, oh, okay, I see why you said that. It's because of this particular, example they gave, or this particular lack of evidence, or whatever it was. And so it actually is explainable in that sense. And so that's the beauty of large language models in some way. Whilst they are incredible black boxes that have this, knowledge, they are explainable by nature because they tell you why. And I think that's the power of this. And so, of course, it's not always going to be perfect at the evaluation, but you can always go back to the transcript. You can go back, watch the video. You can have the full fidelity if you want. But my hope is that over time, the evaluations really make a big time saver, right? So that, talent acquisition teams can get hundreds or, of these videos recorded. And, they'll actually get a very quick way to evaluate and decide which candidates move forward with a shortlist.
Well, that's what I was going to ask as the next question, right, Julian? Because at the moment we receive these volumes of applications and we're making assumptions based on their CVs, and quite often, and we all try to address it, but we all have unconscious bias, right? So, and then we kind of phone screen half a dozen of them out of a few hundred. Like, what's the scalability of this like? Like, is this something that we could send to every applicant to give everyone a shot, or to give everyone a fair go? There you go. See what I did? But is that really how it's designed?
Look, it is designed that way. And of course, when you add friction to a hiring process, whether it's a form, whether it's an assessment, whether it's a video interview, you'll always get some sort of drop off. But the idea is this should be a top of funnel option for the candidate. Right. They should be given the opportunity to interview. If they complete the interview, they will get an evaluation. That evaluation will be made available to the hiring manager. And, obviously that, assessment is provided to try and improve that process to make it efficient. But, that is the proposition, because I think one thing that we forget about the traditional one-way video interviewing is that there's actually a lot of unconscious human bias that exists through that process, right?
Absolutely.
Someone is reviewing and looking at a person, and whether we like it or not, there is just a human quality of making a call. Like, I don't like the look of that background, whatever it is, it's things that we do. And so we'll switch off after watching a video, which is often 15 to 20 minutes, whereas the AI doesn't. It just listens, it reads the transcript, it doesn't look at any of the audio or video per se, it just listens to the words. And then that's where it makes an assumption. So Fairgo ultimately is a reflection on that. It's like, it's using the content of the conversation and nothing else to make an assessment.
Right. Well, I'm sure we have got listeners and viewers out there that are really curious about this, because this is very cool, and there are so many benefits for candidate experience, so many benefits for recruiter experience, right? And it transcends all industry, so it's appropriate for all of us. What's next, Julian? How can people learn more about this? How can people look at it at a deeper level? How can they reach out to you? And what's the future look like for you?
Yeah, look, they can simply head over to Fairgo.ai. We are in a private beta at the moment. I'm hoping next month to make that more public so that anyone can sign up, but certainly request a demo, and I'm happy to jump on a call and showcase the product to you. The goal is over the next couple of months to really, onboard a bunch of customers and improve the product. Of course, it's going to get better. So whatever it is today, it's the worst it's ever going to be, which is awesome thing about generative AI.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm working on integrations with various ATS platforms as well. So, for folks who are thinking, oh, how's this going to work with my existing systems? Certainly you can actually add candidates directly onto the platform. You can put this in as the front door, make candidates apply directly via my sort of page for the job ad. But also in the future, there'll be ATS integration. So if folks have particular platforms they'd like to see integrated, whether that be a calendar tool or an ATS platform. Those are all coming on in future as well.
Fantastic. Well, Fairgo.ai, one to watch. Do you know what? Australia is becoming the new HR Silicon Valley. There is so much cool innovation going on. And I've used the word cool about 1 million times throughout this because I just am blown away and excited by what you're doing, Julian. I really appreciate you joining and sharing this with the audience today. So thank you so much. And everyone listening and viewing, all of the details for Julian are embedded into the summary of the vodcast or podcast. So please do reach out to myself for an intro. I can't wait to see more. I'm going to be getting a deeper demo. Julian, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks so much for having me, Eden. Appreciate it.
Amazing.